Hi, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the 𝗬𝗲𝘀𝘀 Talk Show. This is Season 3, Episode 2, and we are so excited today. We have a full house of experts and nurses who are going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about taxes. It's tax season right now, so taxes are the topic for today. My name is 𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀𝘀. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Kinetics USA. We help nurses come to the United States, and we focus on direct hire. We work with hospitals and nursing homes all over the United States. And I'm joined today by Miss Jean. Hi, Jean. Welcome.
Hello, Tanya. Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Jean needs no introduction. She is extremely well known as one of the admin of 𝗬𝗲𝘀, so we're excited to have Jean here today. We're also joined by Kay. Hi, Kay. Welcome.
Hi, Tanya. Good evening. I'm Kay, the
Hi,
traveling nurse.
Kay, traveling nurse hacker, and we can't wait to hear more about Kay's story. Kay is also an admin of 𝗬𝗲𝘀, right?
Yes, they just got me in.
Newly appointed. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Also joining us is 𝗦𝗲𝘀. Hi, 𝗦𝗲𝘀.
Hi, Kay. Hi, Kay. Sorry. Hi,
Hi,
Tanya.
𝗦𝗲𝘀.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kay. Hi, Jean. Hi, Anthony.
And last but not least is Anthony. The 𝗬𝗲𝘀 Talk Show is really a forum for nurses to help nurses who are coming to the United States. And today's topic, as we said, is about taxes. So we've got a lot to unpack today. We're going to be talking about how taxes work in the United States, just a general overview. We're going to be talking about what is federal tax, what is state tax, what are tax rebates, what are tax refunds. We're going to be talking about some of the forms. What is a W-4? What is a W-2? We're going to be talking about how taxes work if you are coming, for example, from the Philippines and living in the United States, and how it works internationally. So lots and lots of questions. And I see we have lots of people joining us from all over the world. If you are watching today, please put your name into the chat and let us know where you're watching from. I see we've got Arlene watching, Carlene is watching, Ronald from the Philippines, Maria saying hi, Jamila saying hi, Kathy's watching from Texas, lots of people watching all over the United States as well as all over the world. Very exciting. So before we get started talking about taxes, I thought if each of the panel want to just do a quick introduction and background about yourselves, and then we'll get to the topic at hand. Let's start with you, Ms. Jean.
I'm Jean Oliver. I've been here in the USA for 16 years now. I started in Michigan. I worked there for 7 years, and then I moved here in Texas. Been working as a physician liaison here in university. Been in the job for 6 years now, and right now I'm working from home. Somebody is sick at home, so for the past 2 weeks, I'm working from home right now.
Okay, well, we wish whoever is sick to get better, Ms. Jean, and we're excited to have you here. And shout out to the 𝗬𝗲𝘀 admin team for giving everybody this opportunity to learn and share information so that you can transition to the United States in a much easier way. Kay, do you want to give everybody watching a little bit more background about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Kay. I've been here in the United States, accidentally signed my contract, which I have no idea that I signed a job for it. 22
Well,
years
you were
old.
very young. You told us last night you were very young, right, Kay?
Yes, correct. I was told, hey, I met somebody from the airport in the 𝗬𝗲𝘀. Come with me, bring your documents, and we're going to introduce you. I came with my Chuck Taylor's shirt, and everybody was in their business suit. So that's what happened there. I had no clue what I went through. I just signed documents and I went to bed. Call it a day. So I got here at 22 years old. My mom told me, you sign a contract you have no idea of. Quite. So that's what happened to me. Got here, didn't know it was a 3-year contract in New York City. And that was back in 2005, and I signed that contract half asleep, half awake. And it was a 3-year contract. Lots of bumps here and there, but it was a great contract overall. I even extended until 6 years. but I overlapped my travel nursing on my second year because the place was nice, people were nice and accommodating. I started my master's and traveling nurse on top of my full-time job, and
Wow.
just save a lot of money. Advice to save money in retirement, and everything went there in retirement. On my first job and a second job, I just kept it, and now I am able to reach my fire dream, financial independence, retire early at 38. So
Wow. Well, that is, you are definitely living the American dream, Kay.
yes, after learning taxation, thank God, that was one of the biggest impact there. You know, when you realize taxation is a form expenses, and there are ways that you can also cut that out and, you know, be financially literate with what you're doing.
Okay, and financial literacy is really the goal, because on the 𝗬𝗏𝘀𝘀 talk show, we've had other shows about general financial literacy. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about taxes, but I think one thing is really very clear and very important, as Kay has shown in her life, and it's so inspirational, Kay, to hear that, is that it's possible. It's possible to really be financially secure, but you really have to educate yourself. It's not, it doesn't just, you know, arrive like a magic wand.
Absolutely.
Okay. 𝗦𝗫𝘀, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, we migrated to the US 2010 as a physical therapist. But before I consider US, I applied to different countries, including Saudi and Singapore, but didn't had luck. Tried and tried for 10 years until finally I hit my 30, arrived in the US, and of course, been through a lot, humps, all those humps as a beginning, as a beginning immigrant. Work my way to finish my doctorate at the University of Montana through my employer, and then became a rehab manager for 7 years. And like Kay, who retired at age 38, I believe, I guess, I also started my retirement at age 38.
Oh, wow.
Retired from a director of rehab and full-time physical therapist because I want to be full-time mom for my 3 kids. And I learned a lot with all the lessons in life, being not knowing about taxes. And that's when I remember back then I read a book, one of the quotes that said from Albert Einstein, that one of the most hard thing to understand here is income taxes.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I was an immigrant myself. I came here 21 years ago. And as I approached this talk show today, I was actually just saying to my husband a few minutes ago, this one is so interesting to me because even after being here for 21 years, I still have so much to learn.
Yes, true. And though I retired as a full-time physical therapist, I transitioned to become a financial educator, which I love, so much passion, helping families to make a difference, not only, within them, but also, legacy to their family.
Okay. Well, we can't wait to pick your brains and hear some of the tips and pointers that you have for nurses who might be in the United States already. I mean, I think I saw here Maria is in Seattle, HB is in Delaware. So some nurses might be in the US already and still need to learn about taxes. And then there might be some people from outside of the United States. I see we had Maria from Saskatoon, and we've got Arlene from Jamaica. And I think I saw somebody from South Africa. Did I see correctly? There were a lot of people in the chat. So, Anthony, last but not least, go ahead and give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. So my name is Anthony. I specialize in international taxation. I have a master's in international tax. I've been doing it for 15 years now. I started my firm 7 years ago with the intention to help people in the international community immigrating to the US. So it originally started in Los Angeles and in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I commuted back and forth and built the business kind of on both sides of the pond, and focused heavily on European immigrants immigrating to the US and their compliance, and US in entertainment and medical clients. So it ended up morphing into business management for celebrities. I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. So now I am a business manager for a lot of kind of very high profile clientele. But my mission still remains the same. Almost all of our clientele are immigrating from outside the US to have that American dream, to try and achieve it. So I have a firsthand kind of knowledge of so many different stories and all of the issues that come with immigrating to the US. So I hope that I can be a valuable resource to everyone on the call.
Well, Anthony certainly has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and we are really grateful to you for giving your time today and sharing your insights and your knowledge and your experience with so many people who are watching all over the world and in the United States as well, because as I said, many people are here and still don't really understand taxes and how it works. Okay, so let's start talking about taxes. It is tax season right now. So this is really the perfect time to start talking about it. And we're going to start with some of the basics, because I think taxes are a big topic. And for a lot of people, they don't even understand the basics. So that's the best place, I think, for us to start. So the first question I'm going to maybe put to Anthony. If you can maybe tell us, Anthony, just in terms of the basics, what is the IRS and what do they do?
Sure. So the IRS stands for Internal Revenue Service. It's the United States agency that's responsible for the administration and collection of federal taxes in the US. So on the federal level, it's kind of nationwide. It's equivalent to, say, the Bureau of Internal Revenue in the Philippines, or the Federal Tax Agency in the UAE, or the HMRC in the United Kingdom.
Okay, so that gives us a good place to start. Jean and Kay, maybe you can share with us what you, and I think we spoke about this a little bit on the teaser on the pre-show last night, but maybe you can share with everybody watching, as nurses, what did you know, if anything, about taxes and how it worked in the United States? Let's start with you, Jean.
When I came here in the USA, I didn't know anything about taxation. So what I did is that I just sent, because at the end of the year, like usually January 31st, your employer will give you your W-2. That's your income, and with all the withholding there, that's reflected there. So and I don't know anything, and I don't want to commit any mistakes, because sometimes they say if you get audited by the IRS, you will be paying a lot. So what I did is that I have someone, a CPA, who did who filed my income tax.
Okay, so you got an expert to help you, and we're going to talk a little bit about filing of taxes later in the show. Jean, did you know what the IRS was or what they did when you came here?
No, all I know is that if I'm going to work hard, or I'll have an overtime a lot, then I'll be paying a lot also to the US government, to Uncle Sam, to IRS. So that's all I know, that if you work hard, then you have to pay a lot too.
Yeah. What is that saying? The only two things in life you can be sure of is death and taxes.
Okay. Hence why I went into the field.
Okay, well, there you go, Anthony. Okay, Kay, did you know about the IRS, what the organization was about and what taxes were all about before you came here? I know you were very young.
Yeah, so I had no idea what taxes is. I was in the Philippines and we were learning about common law for nurses, and I remember the professor said, if you don't want to pay taxes, create a religion or create a school. That's all I know. I said, I don't think I'll be able to create a religion, so forget about that.
Yeah,
So when I
scratch that one.
so I said probably at school. So anyway, I went to the United States. Again, I had no idea what taxes is. I was earning $100 a month in the Philippines, so I barely paid taxes. so so when I got here, thankfully, I'm blessed to have my aunt who was a CPA in Boston that time. I was in New York, and she said, since you're young, single, you have no dependents, you have no mortgage, put in there in your W-4, claim 4. I have no idea what she said, but I just followed what she said. And then she said, put everything in pre-tax retirement. That's all. That's all the notice I got on my first day at work. When I was filing those documents, I have no idea where my money was coming home. I mean, was going to, but I was coming home with at least more than $100 per month. I was contented. so but saw taxes, and as I mentioned yesterday, also one impact there that I realized was a little wake up call when I took not maternity leave, a sick leave from work, and the payroll didn't pay me right on time, and they missed my payment, and they lump sum all my 3 weeks pay into one, and it was a huge chunk of taxes. I said, what? So overtime doesn't make sense like that. And but I still have no idea how taxes work, but I felt like, yes, doing a lot of hours, it's gonna eat up a lot, especially New York City, where it's triple tax. New York State, federal, and city tax was a big hit for me. But again, thankfully my auntie was able to guide me through that. I'd never had to pay taxes at all at the end of the year.
Okay, so you and Jean were fortunate that, Jean, you found an expert to help you, and Kay, you had your aunt to help you. But 𝗦𝗀, for those nurses who may not have an aunt who is an accountant and a CPA who could help them, or doesn't have the resources or know where to start, can you give an overview of how the US tax system actually works?
Okay, so yes, the US tax system is progressive. What does it mean? The more you make, the more you tax. Unless you know all these credits, these rebates, and that's what you said a while ago, it's education. Education could be able to be a leverage for you to be able to lower your taxes. But of course, without resources, environment, and someone that could really be a leverage for you to be able to know if this is hard. Like for me, when I first started, I was just inquisitive because at first when I came to the US, I knew my per hour. I was excited about it. And then suddenly when I received my paycheck, I did the math. This was supposed to be the sum of everything. Where did everything
Where
went?
did it go?
Yes, where did it go? And then I look at and then I it's so funny. I talked to my HR and I tried to explain, right? And she told me, hey, 𝗦𝗀, no, because of this, and that, all the deductions. And then from there, I look at my pay stub, and I started analyzing my pay stub. And then if I do overtime, this happens. So I pay more taxes, I get less. So I have that inquisitive attitude because I have family to feed. I was the only one working. My husband has to stay home, take care of the 3 kids. It was tough, but it has to start from you knowing and experiencing everything. But like what I said, it's progressive, but I had to really find ways to learn how to lower them. And your HR will not sit down with you and really educate you about it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we hear this from many nurses, that you feel sometimes intimidated to ask questions where you don't really understand what it's all about. Maybe you feel shy, you feel embarrassed. And then when you speak to HR, maybe they don't really explain it in full because they're used to maybe dealing with Americans who maybe understand it a little better. Although I can tell you a lot of Americans don't understand how taxes work as well. Anthony, can you maybe give us some insight as to the different kinds of tax structure? So what is federal tax? What is state tax? What is city tax? Can you maybe give us like an overview of that, of what that entails?
Sure. One thing to note on the previous conversation, a lot of times HR will just say, "Oh, consult a tax professional. We're not authorized to talk about this." So, and then you kind of are put into a loop of not really knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them, and you don't really even know the questions to ask. So I hope that this can help. So if with the levels of taxation, a lot of times we talk about these progressive taxes, but that's only one part of the puzzle. So a lot of times people forget about payroll taxes, which are going to be called Social Security and Medicare, and that is always baseline 7.65% right off of your pay. That on top of your ordinary income tax and state income tax, and sometimes local, factor into the full picture of what your tax obligations are going to look like in the US. So you have your federal, and on the federal level, we've got different rates for investments. We have different rates for employment. On the state level, you're going to be, it's a lot easier, and it's typically, again, progressive. So you're going to have, a smaller percentage of taxation, maybe, 5%. It can go upwards to 13% in some states. Then you also have some local tax, which is going to be like New York City, St. Louis. Those are going to have kind of an additional tax tacked onto the total tax bill. Just like Kay was saying, when she immigrated, she had all these different taxes, and the paycheck ended up dwindling down to, peanuts. I'll bet, $100 more than she's making in the Philippines, but still, a lot less than she anticipated because of all those various taxes. I see people get shocked when their pay is, say $100, but then they only take home $48 of it because it's all going to tax. And they're like, well, I didn't understand that the US tax system was paying more than 50% in taxes. That seems wild. But it can be the case if you're not able to offset it in any way.
It always comes to mind. I love that that series Friends, and in one of the episodes of Friends, Rachel, who Jennifer Aniston's character, gets her first paycheck, and she looks at the paycheck and she said, "Who is 𝗧𝘃𝗀?" Because it's like she was expecting one thing on her paycheck and she got something completely different. And I think that's what happens to many nurses or many immigrants that come to the United States, because they think they're going to get one thing and then they get their paycheck and it's like, oh my goodness. I think we have some graphics on federal and state taxes. 𝗦𝗫𝘀, maybe you can just talk us through. I know Anthony gave us kind of an overview, but maybe 𝗦𝗫𝘀, if you can talk us through the what is federal tax, and just and how that works.
Yes, so as you see in your screen, so federal tax is what we pay to the national government, and it's taxed on what you earn. So from individual income taxes to corporate to payroll to capital gains. And of course, what we buy, sales tax, your gross receipts, your value-added taxes, and excise taxes, especially you buy large purchases, and tax on the things you own, like your property, like your houses, your tangible personal property, estate, and wealth taxes. This is the funny thing, is what they said. You work hard, you pay tax. You buy things, you pay tax. You even work less, you pay tax. Even when we die, we pay tax. It's tax everywhere. It's fun, right?
Okay, so they've got the federal tax, and am I right in saying that everybody pays federal tax? So if somebody knows nothing about taxes, correct? Right, 𝗦𝗫𝘀?
Yes, but of course, it depends on some income levels.
Okay,
So
so
there-
depending
there-
how
yeah.
much you earn is how much you would be paying.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the federal tax side. Anthony, I know you touched on this on the state tax, but we have a graphic that I'd like to show, which shows the different states and the different tax rates in the different states. This is a very important graphic. Can you maybe talk us through this graphic for everybody watching and how the different state taxes might differ?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at just the gray ones, so Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, South Dakota, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, those are, and Alaska, those are always no state income tax due on your earnings or your investment income. The catch in those states are that they're taxing different items at a different rate than most other states. So you'll typically see real estate taxes be much higher in those states compared to other states in terms of real estate holdings. And I think the reason for that is that those states figured, well, if real estate holdings are large, then that individual or individuals are wealthier and therefore should be paying higher property taxes. And people who don't make as much money, don't have as much real estate, and they shouldn't have to pay state income taxes if they are of a a lower income bracket or no income. The other states, so you'll notice that on the coasts are the highest level of state taxation. California and New York are going to be some of the highest tax rates that you would see. New York City slightly higher than California, especially if you're living in the 5 boroughs of New York City. The remainder of the states all have very comparable taxation. And again, those are going to be on a progressive tax kind of schedule. And then New Hampshire is the only strange one where they don't tax you on employment income, so earned income, but they will tax you on other items like investment income.
Okay, so that's really helpful. And I see that Nash has a question. How much is the tax deduction in Texas state, as I don't have any idea about it? Is the tax by payroll time or time per the hour? No, is the tax by payroll time or per the hour of payment? Anthony?
So yeah, so Texas does not have a state income tax on your earnings. So you're not going to have any type of deduction or payment to Texas for income taxes. If you own property in Texas, then you would have a property tax bill that will be, a solid amount of money. But a lot of times if you have a mortgage, it's already paid through an escrow account every single month. One kind of tip or trick with reducing that tax bill is something called a homestead exemption, and it's allowed to be claimed on your property if it's your main property of residence in Texas. And that will then reduce down some of that real estate tax that you would be assessed.
Okay, so Jean, do you know about that? Because I know you live in Texas.
All I
Hey,
know,
Jean.
I'm paying like $6,000 for the whole year for my property tax. This house that I just bought, and I heard about that homestead. I've received letters about that, and I just ignore it. I don't know.
No, don't ignore that. And you only have until the beginning of April to file it. So you want to make sure you do that. It's so easy. You have to make sure that your ID has your name on it, and it has the address that you're living in, which is the address that the homestead exemption is to be applied to. And you submit that to them, and it's really just a 2-page form that you submit.
Okay. Are they going to mail that again to me, like
You can do it online, or you can print it out online, but I can send you a link to help you out later on today.
All right.
Where in Texas are you based?
Huh?
Where in Texas are you based?
In San Antonio.
Cool. I'm in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Anthony. And maybe after the show, you can go into the chat and post that link. So would that only be for somebody based in Texas?
Correct. So this is what complicates the U.S. further. Every state is going to have completely different tax laws, rules, benefits, deductions, rules against foreign income, etc. So you have to be very diligent with kind of the rules and requirements of that state that you're living in. And if you live in multiple states, then it's going to be even more complicated.
Okay, like Kay as a travel nurse.
Yeah, very complicated. And we could get into that. I could talk about it for days, but most issues I see are when someone's living in, say, New Jersey and they're working in New York City, or vice versa, because they're living in New Jersey.
You just described Kay.
Right. It causes a lot of complications because New York is notorious for trying to tax you on the earnings in New York, even if you're not living in New York. It can be quite complicated.
Yep.
Okay, and that's where I see Ronald is saying, I hope we can have a transcript on this discussion. And yes, Ronald, there will be a transcript that will be posted. But that's why I love the 𝗬𝗲𝘀 talk show, because here is Jean, who's been living in America for 16 years and just learned something new, right? That's going to save her money. I love it. Okay, so I think for any nurse who is maybe coming to the United States now, where they this is all new for them, I think this is a really valuable discussion, learning about the difference, the federal taxes, the state taxes, but there's a lot of other jargon. Madel, maybe you can share with us some input on things like, what does tax credits mean? What are rebates? What are tax refunds? I think we actually have a graphic of that. And perhaps you can just explain what because this is also like a lot of jargon. What does some of the jargon mean?
So there are a couple of credits, rebates, refunds that we heard from our tax preparer that we can take advantage of. As you can see in your screen, the tax credit alone is what taxpayer can take off dollar per dollar, which includes like health deductions, health credits from the taxes they owe. Tax refund is, of course, any reimbursement for any excess amount we paid to the federal government or the state government. And then some rebates is a type of refund on taxes when the liability is less than the taxes individually as paid. Like for me, I have 3 kids, so I get the child tax credit. I have a kid who's in college, so I get some education credits and get some qualified medical expenses. Especially I had surgery at the beginning of the year, which we really paid a lot. So that give us some health credits there. And if someone out there have health savings account, flexible savings account, those are also some credits. And rebates. So they're also, like for me, I have 3 kids. So each kid, how much is about $3,000 per child, 6 to 17 years old. If your kid is 5 years and below, you get a 600 more, 3,600 per kid. And also for those of us that doesn't receive the 3rd stimulus payment, there's also what we call the recovery rebate credit. So there are several credits that we can leverage from, so that we could be able to see what we can maximize from our tax refunds, tax credits. And of course, always consult your tax preparer for all credits that you could be able to take advantage of. And I think that's it for those credits.
Okay. So that's a very helpful explanation. Thank you for clarifying that for us. Jean and Kay, can you talk a little bit about your personal experience? I mean, you don't have to share your specific amounts if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable, but can you talk about your experience with tax credits, tax refunds, tax rebates, any of those concepts?
So I'll start. So what my experience was, I was putting away money on the side to cut my taxable income when I came here. As I mentioned, my auntie mentioned to me, it will help you lower your taxable income. I have no idea what she's talking about. I just followed her. So, okay. So, I have no idea what gross income was. I have no idea what was my modified adjusted gross income. So, apparently, I learned later on that that was the real, what Uncle Sam looks at, the Maggie, which was on a tax form, modified adjusted gross income. Initially, I didn't even know who Uncle Sam was. So who is this? The Ronald McDonald kind of guy to you? So, so it was something I have really no idea. Maggie, stuff like that. But as time goes by, I get refund. Like my auntie said, you're stashing away money pre-tax and you are investing your money. And she said, when you are helping Uncle Sam, helps his economy, he's more forgiving to you, and I didn't get that. So it took me years to really realize that you know what, I think I understand what she's saying now. But initially I started traveling nursing because then I started realizing this is actually a good route for me as a single, because they're giving these tax-free stipends for housing, and they said I didn't have to use all of it as long as I have proof for housing that I'm duplicating my housing. And I said this was a good route to really save money for taxes. Like for me, when I was starting this travel nursing more than 10 years ago, my tax-free housing stipends and other stipends that were given to me were about 50% of my income. So that was a big impact to lower my taxable income. It was 50% tax-free. So it was a big factor for me. And then I started realizing now and learning, okay, if I don't go far, can I still do it? And then I realized, I when I started learning finance and business and being able to just work from home, work from my state, work from my location in Metro, and just start my business as a traveling nurse myself, as a vendor. 1099, that was my first thing to heard. 1099, you are a business and you can deduct your expenses. I'm like, what? I got more interested actually when they did 2018 revision, because I said, Trump did something. He's up to something. So I'm not being political. I'm not really into politics, but I said if a president do something radical and big change like that, maybe there's something that I can take advantage of. And that was my really time to really make a big difference with my taxation life, geared towards more business and help the economy. And that's when I learned that what my auntie was saying was right. If you help the economy of Uncle Sam, he will be more forgiving. And those are what Adele mentioned: investments. It will help, capital gains if you invest more than 1 year, and your capital gains will be taxed less. And I'm like, okay, I like this game.
It got more interesting.
Very interesting. And actually, then I realized what happens to America is actually they favor the people who really do their homework. So I said this is very important to learn, because again I was just basing from my tax preparer. Oh, you're getting refund. Oh, great, thanks so much. And I didn't realize um, they said taxation is so annual. So I guess whatever he refund me, he didn't really made a great job, but he was doing just the right thing. So I didn't have the understanding of the refund back then. I thought, hey, my tax guy was doing a great job. He gave me so much refund. Didn't realize actually I also was part of that job. Why I did that? Because I was actually, withholding more, and I get my benefits at the end. So that was my impression at the beginning.
Okay, and it's interesting how your knowledge and your experience developed and evolved over time, where now you've learned so much and you're able to implement that in a way that is very helpful in terms of
Yeah.
your taxes. Jean, do you have anything that you wanted to share just in terms of your experience with some of those concepts like tax rebates, tax credits, or refunds?
Um, as advised by my accountant, the one who do my tax every year, because mine is kind of complicated because I'm working, my husband is working, and I also have a business in the Philippines. But my business is also registered here in the US, so I am also paying like a finance tax, which is so great. I paid a lot for the past 2 years, and so what my CPA has advised to me is that I have to maximize everything. So for my 401k, I maximize it. My 457, I also maximize it. So it's like 19,000 every year for the maximum contribution for that. And also, so what she said is that with your business, you can deduct everything that you had, like meals, gas, and everything. So that's what I followed. And also with so that's it. It's everything is maximized for me because I have a business that I'm paying a lot.
Okay. And Anthony and Medell, as the two experts on the show, is there anything that you would like to share with everybody who's watching around the world about what are some of the ways to make sure that your tax is you're being taxed as effectively or as efficiently as possible? Let's start with you, Medell.
Okay, so of course, first is always seek a professional help because it's hard to really just get into the hoops when it comes to the taxation, because the tax code itself is a 6,000 pages book.
Yeah.
It's really complicated. But nevertheless, besides that, you have to do your own homework when it comes to documenting what's necessary and ordinary, especially if you have a business, and all what Kay had mentioned about all these write-offs, these stipends, they have to be properly documented in that way in the event of audit. But by the way, audit for me is not really bad. Audit is just something to kind of validate what you put in. It's kind of like a learning experience between the taxpayer and of course the one who's auditing it. So I just want to also point that out because most of us are afraid of the word audit, right? Audit is just a
Very
way to
scary.
correct. It's just always to correct something, right? And then of course, with all, especially if you have a business, there's so many ways to really document that properly as well. Because the same thing, there are so many. IRS will try its best to really find something with if there's something wrong with the way, how much and how many we filed for taxes. It's just the way it is. But nevertheless, to sum it up, just seek for consultation, educate. That's
Good,
the best.
good advice, Anthony.
Yeah.
I see you were educating already, because I'm just looking in the chat, and
Yeah.
Ventus is saying I need to take a look on the homestead later. Rosario is saying for the homestead, just go to the county appraisal district office. So a lot of education are happening just in the last 45 minutes. But what would you add?
Yeah, so we have to be careful we don't conflate the tax deductions and tax credits. So they're very different. So tax credits are, like Medell said, dollar for dollar. Tax deductions, like your medical costs, those are going to be a deduction, and that's not going to reduce your taxes dollar for dollar, but it's going to reduce the overall amount of tax that is assessed. So effectively, if you have $100 of income and you had $20 of medical expenses and you were eligible to itemize your deductions. So we have two different types of deductions. We have standard deduction, which most people would be under, which is, it changes every year, but it's just over $12,000 for individuals. That reduces your overall taxable income, and then you're assessed on what's left over. The health costs are actually a more complicated calculation. That's just a part of a itemized deduction component, which is much more advanced than this conversation. So just keep that in mind. When it comes to businesses, when you own a business, I certainly wouldn't advise writing off all of your meals and all of your vehicle expenses, because that's the easiest way that you will definitely get audited. And I also find that most audits happen when a client has what's called a Schedule C business, which is a sole proprietor or a freelancer, a 1099 worker. So with that in mind, there are ways to reconfigure your strategy to reduce your audit risk and to kind of safeguard your earnings and deductions in a kind of more efficient and effective way. And sometimes that means setting up a separate entity for your 1099 income. That then kind of removes that income out of your personal return for the most part, and it reduces that audit risk just based on kind of, you know, all of the clientele that I've worked with over the past 15 years.
Okay, so that gives us a really good understanding of how that might work. We have so many questions coming in, and I'm going to try and get through as many of them as possible. And I think just for everybody watching, just to bear in mind that taxation is a complicated topic. And I think it was Anthony who said we can probably talk about this for days. So for the purposes of today's show, we're just trying to get through as many of the questions as possible, and also to try and cover some of the more basic questions rather than the more complicated ones. So Julian is asking about the child tax credit. And 𝗦𝗀, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so qualifying, like what I mentioned a while ago, child tax credit there's a qualifying age for that. So 6 to 7 is at least you get a credit of 3,000. And then of course, and again, like what I noted a while ago, is less than 5 and below, you get 3,600. So like what someone had mentioned a while ago, more kids, the more kids you get, the more credits. But yeah, so that's just basically, that's it. And of course, if a 24-year-old still living with you and you pay more than half of their expenses, you can still qualify them as a dependent. And if you have a mentally or physically disabled a family relative or kid, that could also be considered part of the child tax credit. And there are also other credits like dependent child tax credits, and you know, especially if you send them to daycare and something like that. So there's more into it, but and like what I said, that's the CPA. But here to note too, they have to stay with you at least 6 months. At least 6 months. at least
Okay.
6 months with you. It's very crucial for you when you're claiming that. They have to stay at least 6 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also, there are also questions. I have encountered one that, hey, Madel, can I write off my kid who's in the Philippines? No, you cannot do that, right? Besides, they have to have a valid social or at least tax identification number. They have to live with you at least 6 months. And those are the things. Is even spouses, you cannot even claim that. So when you file your taxes here, you are single, even though you're married. But you can add on to that, Anthony, as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is, again, like there's a lot to kind of unravel here. So it has to be a qualifying child, like Madel mentioned. A qualifying child, that means 6 months, so half the year, living in the United States. So if that child lived with you for 3 months in the Philippines and then 2 months in the US, that's not 6 months in the US. So you automatically, that child is disqualified, even if they have a individual taxpayer identification number, which is also called an ITIN, ITIN, or a social security number. Now, if a child is not eligible for a social security number, then you have to apply for an individual taxpayer identification number. And that process is tedious. You have to submit their passport or visa. You have to fill out a form, submit it to the IRS, and it could take quite a long time to get that documentation back and eventually get the ITIN. So if your child does not qualify for a social security number, when you arrive to the US and you are legally allowed to live in the US, you have to apply for an ITIN immediately, because if you go to your tax preparer in March and it's due in April, there's no way that you're going to get an ITIN issued soon enough. There's ways around it, but it just complicates things further and creates more mess. So you just want to be very diligent with getting that ITIN if it is necessary.
Okay.
And then the child tax credit also has income limitations. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
Also,
So
I want to point out
yeah.
to my experience. Sorry to add this
Go
one, because
ahead.
I had this experience because when my family came to the US, they're under age 4. And when they were released with social security number, there is a notation that says not valid for work authorization. And I got audited for that, from claiming my dependents, because when we switch from working visa to green card, of course, it's our responsibility to go to Social Security and change that notation, because otherwise you will be disqualified as well. So I didn't get that until finally audited. That's why I told a while ago, audit. Don't be. We shouldn't be really anxious about it, because it corrects something.
Okay. So that's some very good pointers and tips from the experts here. I want to thank Anna, who's sharing her story about living in New York and how she got her refund. So thank you for sharing that, Anna. Roy is asking, is it allowed or possible to file taxes under married filing jointly in a situation wherein one from the couple has no job? One of the couple has no job. Anthony?
Yeah, that is actually very beneficial, because that's going to increase the standard deduction that you're eligible for from $12,000 up to $24,000. So your income that's taxed is going to be immediately reduced down by $24,000. So you're going to be in a much lower tax bracket and therefore hopefully get a larger tax refund.
Okay, so there you go. Good advice, Roy. And lucky you asked that question. And I'm sure a lot of people are probably wanting to know about that. Donna is asking, how about if I have parents in the Philippines and I'm the one paying for their monthly meds? Would that matter in paying tax in the United States? Madel?
Yeah, definitely not. Again, like what Anthony had mentioned, we have to apply. It's either a social security and they have to be a qualifying dependent or at least an ITIN, and they have to be a resident at least 6 months.
Okay, so thank you for giving us that explanation. So we have a question here, which is about filing. And I wanted to ask the nurses, when you first came to the United States, you will have received from your employer a W-4 form. Do you remember getting that and how you fill that in, Jean or Kay?
W4, the only thing I remember is that I claimed two because they said you can claim yourself as one and you yourself as one, and then by the end of the year it's just almost even. So from now, from the time that I started here until now, I only claimed two. But they said if you are single and you have another job, you have to claim zero. I'm not so familiar with that, but I just did like two
Yeah.
from the very beginning.
Can be very confusing. Very, very confusing. I think we have a graphic of the W-4, and maybe we can put that up. And Anthony, if you can maybe just give us a brief summary of what this all means. What is a withholding certificate, and what does this all mean? Filing single, married, filing jointly, or head of household?
Yeah, so a W-4 is going to basically determine how much withholding tax is assessed on your earnings from the federal level. So it doesn't take into consideration states. If you look at step one, the main information at the top is very self-explanatory. Then you get into the area of C in step one, single, married filing separate. So married filing separate means if you are married to someone and they are a spouse living abroad and they don't have a social security number, they're a non-resident and have no relationship to the US, you would be considered married filing separate with a non-resident alien. So you would mark off married filing separate there. If you have a spouse that is living with you that has a valid social security number or an ITIN, or if you're married to someone who's a US person that's living abroad, that would be married filing joint. A qualifying widow is if you have a spouse that's passed away. You would mark that off in the year that you were a qualifying widow. Head of household is going to be if you are the main income producer and your spouse does not work and you're living together and you have children and you're providing all the support, you would mark off head of household. Your tax professional, though, would determine whether married filing jointly or head of household is best for you when you're going to do your taxes. Step two is just explaining to you what you need to do if you have multiple jobs, etc. Step three is what everyone's been talking about on this call of, putting a 1 or a 2 or a 3. So that's going to be determined based on the amount of qualifying children that you have or qualifying other dependents. A qualifying other dependent is going to be perhaps a child or a family member that lives with you, that you provide more than half of their support, but they don't qualify for a social security number and they do qualify for an ITIN. That's where you would kind of mark off other dependents. Once you have the amount of dependents determined, you're then going to fill in your total amount of qualifying, deductions, if you will, for children.
Okay. All right. So that is very helpful because for many nurses, when they arrive in the United States and they're given that W-4 form, they're like, well, what is this? They don't even, most people don't even know what that is. We are almost at the hour. I don't know how we got here so quickly. But I wanted to just finish off and talk. We were going to talk about international taxes and we didn't even get to that part. But I wanted to just talk about the experience of filing your taxes now in the tax season. Kay, can you maybe share with us what your experience has been like in actually going about the process of filing your taxes? And what would you say are maybe the mistakes that you made in the beginning?
So my taxation life has been like a roller coaster. So initially, I have no idea. I was just instructed by my aunt, and then I started meeting people, Filipino community after about 3 years. Initially, first 2 years, my auntie was, doing my taxes, but she was out of state, and she was, of course, busy with her professional life as well. So then I met couple of Filipino nurses say, hey, go to this guy. He makes he gives you good refund. So okay, I gave it to the guy, and after 5 years I got audited. So I have no idea what this guy, the good guy that gave us good refund, was doing in our taxation. Apparently, I look into it when I got the audit. I called him, hey, can you help me here? Because he wasn't my guy anymore after that. They said, oh, you have to do it. You just have to submit file. I said, but I have no idea what you put in here. What are they asking? So that was my biggest issue then. And then I learned that even though the tax preparer did your taxes, you should really know what's going in there. Apparently, he put in there a lot of deductibles, like $50,000 worth of living expenses that he deducted that I have no idea where he got it from.
Oh,
So it was a big issue. It's a problem there. Then I learned that, that the audits you will get, if it's not within the next year, it can be after 5 years, after 7 years. So if you didn't get audited for first year, it doesn't mean you're off the hook. They will catch you after 5 years or 7 years. So that was my biggest turnaround there, that I said, you know what, I think I have to be responsible with, I hire a professional, but it's still my responsibility what gets in there. If I don't understand, maybe I should ask the tax professional. And it took me a while to, let's say, that this is not something that you should DIY. I mean, a lot of people like to do it. TurboTax, I did it. TurboTax, tax layer, I was DIYing. But then later on, when you married, you got kids, you got your business, this is not something that you should be DIYing at all. And now I've been working with a CPA. I also have an enrolled agent working with me. Enrolled agent, for the reference, a lot of people is curious. EA, they're IRS trained people. So I have two people working with me. Our taxation is more complicated than before. So this is our route. It was the best decision that we ever think of. And the way I consider now, tax preparers, CPAs, they're not expenses. They are actually investment for me.
Oh, I love that. That I think was
Yeah.
very well said. There are, and that being said, I mean, there are some people who will do their taxes on their own, and it works perfectly fine for them. But I think that was really good advice. Jean, what would you say is your best advice to any nurse who's maybe arriving in the United States now for the first time? This can feel so overwhelming, so scary. What would you say is your best advice?
My best advice would be, if you really don't know anything, and we tend to DIY everything. So I have to advise you to get someone who knows very well, a CPA, a tax preparer, like those. Get a CPA, most especially, so that in the end, because if you get audited, someone will help you like validate whatever that needs to be done. So someone will help you. So for me, from the very beginning, when I started here in the US, I had someone who prepared, and especially now that I have a business, it's very much complicated. I have a bookkeeper, I have a CPA who's doing everything. So it's less headache, it's not much expensive. So get someone who will prepare your tax for you. And for those only who's only have one job, you will only pay like $75 for that, and it's nothing compared to the headache that you will get later on.
Yeah, it's as Kay said, it's an investment. Medell, how I know Jean and Kay have spoken about their experiences, what would a nurse look for in an accountant? What are some of the things that are important to be aware of when choosing who you're going to work with?
Okay, so personally, if I'm gonna answer that question, something that understands your situation, but we have to be transparent. We have to tell everything to our CPA, to our accountant, what's our business, our side business, and what do we do, right? Tell everything, and of course, someone that could really educate you, and just understand just to get a refund, like what happened to Kay. They just throw it out, and they really have to holistically give you that approach as, of course, as a customer, right? Like for me, my CPA is not only a CPA. She educated me from A to Z, including, hey, Madel, if you lower your taxes, if you know how taxes work, and even if you know how money works, it will work for your advantage. That's why when I started, learning about that, right now I'm getting all the benefits of it, including free college money for my kids. And I have 3 kids. It was a heck of a nightmare thinking, how can I be able to send my kids to college? It was crazy. But that's when she told me, like, hey, Madel, if you know how this works, all those worries will be gone. And also she told me, Madel, yes, you're maximizing your taxes right now, taking advantage of whatever your employer can get, but what's going to be the future? What does that mean? We tend to try to lower our taxes right now. We also have to think about the future too. And we're not going to get any younger. We're going to get older. Are we going to be paying more taxes even at the end of our lives? So that's why balanced portfolio kicks in. And I learned everything about that with my CPA because she treated me like a family, and there was a really good relationship. And of course, I asked a lot of questions. Someone that could really be patient with you.
Okay, so also very valuable advice, very good insights, Madel, on what to look for and how to go about it. Final words, Anthony, for any nurse who is coming to the United States or somebody who's lived here for many years. I see we've got lots of people. Kathy's watching from Maryland. We've got people watching from in the United States as well as outside. What would you say is your best advice?
If you have assets internationally, I highly recommend you seek out a professional that understands international taxes and those specific issues. And do not try to pretend like they don't exist, because the IRS imposes crazy penalties, $10,000 for non-compliance, up to 50% of your assets if you do not comply. So when someone asks you, your accountant asks you if you have international assets, you need to tell them, and you need to tell them what they are: bank accounts, pensions, investment accounts, real estate, foreign entities, foreign trusts. Super, super important. It's the only way that we can best protect you and ensure that you don't get put to a sticky situation.
Thank you. So excellent advice there as well. And with that, we are at the end of the show. I was just thinking, as we're talking now, I think we need to do another show and bring back this esteemed panel where we can talk a little bit more about all the different aspects of taxation, because it really is a big topic. And I think we're just really scratching the surface right now. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Everybody who's watched all over the world. We have many more talk shows that are coming up. In fact, we actually have a graphic of some of the upcoming shows. So we have on our Kinetics USA channel, our Friday show, Onwards and Upwards. This Friday, we're talking about stateside, where we highlight certain states and what it's like to live in those states. And this week, we're doing North and South Dakota. On the 25th, we have an IELTS course review with Swoosh English for those nurses who are still battling with the IELTS, a really important topic on Friday the 25th. In March, we have stateside, where we're going to be talking about New York, and maybe Kay will come back. Kay, will you come back for the New York show?
Oh, sure.
Okay, there you go. Okay, we'll be back. On the 11th, we have our usual immigration Q&A. And on the 15th, we have our next 𝗲𝗀𝘀 talk show, which we will be targeting specifically the first 30 days in the United States. On the 18th, we have a kinetics recruitment event. And then our Onwards and Upwards client showcase is Oshner in Louisiana on the 25th. So lots of shows coming up. Great things ahead. I want to thank everybody again for joining us. And I also want to thank the experts who have said that they are happy to go into the chat and answer any questions that we weren't able to get to. So thank you for doing that. On the Kinetics USA website, also a great article on taxation and just the basics for everybody to learn. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.